Joe, you look less reddish purple now.
Okay, are we unmuted now?
Yes.
All righty. All right. This meeting will come to order. The grand experiment will begin. The first item here is roll call, and roll will, can I just say they're all present? Good. Thank you. The approval of the agenda, any items, well, when we get to the consent agenda, I'm sure there's a couple of things that will merit discussion. My suggestion is to go through those, in order, 1, 2, 3. And as we come up to an item you want to talk about, we'll get that and then approve them all at the end. Can you live with that?
I'm going to have to abstain on a couple, Lee.
Okay, when we get to that,
Okay.
you just point them out. Any comments on number 1 or number 2? If not, can I go to number 3?
Yes.
Number 3, I'm going to vote against that one. I'm just not comfortable eliminating the newspapers. And, there are people that don't have a computer and there are still dead spots in the county. So I'm not comfortable approving that one.
All righty.
So do we pull that one, please?
Yeah, we can vote on number 3 separate. Okay.
For clarification, is that just for projects that are coming up for bid?
I think it's for everything, but certainly bids is one of them. Because the people that we do business with typically are the same group of people. But I suppose if some newbie wants to do business with us, would they feel excluded? Tell you what, we'll vote on that one separately.
And maybe get some more clarification at that point, too, then, from Mike.
Okay. Number 4.
I'm going to have to abstain on the farming part of that, but I would vote in favor of the other 4.
What do you mean the other 4?
The baseball, or the other, yeah. There are 4. There are 5 3-2 malt liquors licenses there.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to abstain on the farming baseball one.
Tell you what, when we get to moving approvals, you let us know which ones you want out. We'll work with the West and we'll come back and address these one by one. Can you live with that?
Yep.
Great.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Number 5. Number 6. Joe, did you have comments on number 6?
You're reading my mind over the internet. That's incredible. I just wanted to comment.
They changed my medication, Joe.
So, oh, that's just like changing the channel. See, we had discussion on that. The approval of the building of that garage passed. However, another item agenda came up in that around that building and around that property, there was a good number of let me just say, an abandoned junkyard. And there's probably several hundred cars there that maybe date back to the time of the 60s or 70s, and including things, a cement mixer, roller, turned over bus, and all that stuff. And eventually that stuff needs to get cleaned up.
Okay.
We'll move, environmental will be moving forward with that.
All right. Number 7, anybody? Number 8, that's continued until May. So the appropriate way to handle this is to approve that or wait until May? I'll wait on that, and maybe we'll get some insights in the next 10 minutes on that. Number 9?
Lee, on number 8, just to comment, we had a good number of telephone calls in opposition, as well as emails that you folks probably did not see. Of course, that's from the neighborhood.
Okay.
Is that for that processing or that locker?
No, the locker went through with no issues at all. That's with Milk and Honey as far as the entertainment portion of what they're proposing.
Yeah.
And it's actually going to probably go back to township as well before it comes back to us.
Yeah, the note I've got on that is this is continued until May.
So do we just pull that off the consent agenda then?
That might be the appropriate way to handle that.
Okay.
Okay, out. All right. Number 9.
No, that went with no issues. It's a very good facility they have going there. It's been, I think, almost 100 years or so.
Okay, well, then they've got some history.
Maybe as you're going through these, Lee, can you just say the heading of what they are?
Yeah. How about I just say the number? You got an agenda in front of you. Will that work, Steve?
Well, but if you're scrolling down through it, you can't see the number unless
okay.
Or does it it probably corresponds, like B9 is number 9,
Right.
That's
Yep.
Coronas.
Okay. Well, number 10 is the Solar Club application on behalf of the Reber Trust in Albany. Anybody object to that?
There was no action taken according to it, right? Planning Commission didn't take any action?
Yes, the commission passed that, but that was not this month. It was the previous month. We had some questions, though, on the decommissioning. They had actually come up with $125,000, which is the largest amount we've seen. And as a sidebar, I was going to bring up the issues on the solar farms. You want to bring it up at the end, or you want to talk about briefly now?
Oh, let's talk now. You got it on the top of your mind. Let her rip.
Okay, we've been having some discussion as these things have been coming through to us. In particular, the chair brought up it a number of times. They continue to proliferate in Stearns County. We have over 90 applications. I think we lead the state in number of solar farms considerably. Down the road, we have questions about decommissioning, about what that escrow amount should be, or the payment should be up front to make sure that they're decommissioned 25 years from now. Environmentally, we're not sure what they contain and how that's going to be handled, as well as change in ownership. We've had one that's changed ownership 3 times in 1 year. So these are all questions we have about, again, the proliferation of the solar farms. And should we be looking into changing our policy? Should we put a moratorium on it? And I said I would get a feel where the board might be on those issues.
Okay, well, we're going to be talking about the big picture on solar farms as a separate agenda item but the background right now helps, and when we get to the end, we'll talk about it more.
All right.
So relative to 10,
It was approved.
okay. Keep track of the items you folks are want to hold off separately, and the ones that don't have a problem, we'll approve at the end. Steve, what was your issue in number 11?
Okay, at number 11, the biggest change is they'd be allowed to crush from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. I believe prior to that, the crushing, would stop earlier. And, I think you got a separate email from Angie. There's 3 pits right in this same area. And some of the residents just to the east of this one, which is closest to the county road, they're not against the mining part of it, but part of the change in the hours of operation for crushing going to 10 p.m. was one of their concerns. If you look at what Angie just sent, there's another pit operated by CJK Partnership, which is right next, just to the west of this one. And their hours are from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday. And, this one here, I think the Planning Commission approved the change to 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Saturday for crushing. The other pits, there's another CJK Partnership pit further west. They're 6 a.m. to 7:30, like for hauling, and then 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Saturday for crushing. Being all 3 of them are in the same area, it'd be kind of nice to have continuity. I did talk to Saponiacs, who do pretty much a lot of the crushing for all the pits. So they actually crush in the other 2 pits, which are owned by other individuals. And they're like, well, we just want the same rates in our pit as the other pits. And they did say on average year, each pit, they might be in for up to 2 weeks. And sometimes it's like, well, I understand the noise. It's kind of like your grain dryer is running in the fall when farmers are harvesting their corn or soybeans. And I know there's no clear-cut answer to satisfy everybody, but that was kind of the biggest issues was allowing the 10 p.m. Now, if it'd be in April and May that they'd be in the crushing, I don't think anybody would really care. It's the June, July, and August. People are outside and it's nice out. You're listening to the crusher, clanging and banging. But I guess it's no different than if a tractor's out in the field, working either. But I don't know if anybody else, how big a discussion was at the Planning Commission on extending that crushing till 10?
Steve,
What do you want to
brought
do?
that up at the meeting. And my point was similar to yours. I guess I would have rather not had seen it go till 10 o'clock. I wanted to close it off at 8 as well. But they were insisting that, well, they could get done with their work if they got those extra 2 hours every night, that would be fewer days in the pit. So then the overall length of time in the pit would be shorter.
Good point.
Yeah,
But nevertheless, I was in favor of shutting it down at 8 myself.
yeah, and that was one of the discussions with Saponiac, when I talked to them yesterday afternoon. And it's kind of the neighborly thing, do you want to say, would you call them and say, hey, we're coming in this week to crush for 10 days, if you plan something, but, I guess it's, in a way, it's commerce. The pit next to it goes till, 7:30? And that, or no, 8 o'clock, and this one would go till 10. So then as the next, when the other one comes up for renewal, is that going to, change to 10?
Agreed. So I would be comfortable restricting it till 8 o'clock. I don't know how you feel.
Well, then I go back to your point. If it stretches it out 2 more days, would you rather have 2 less days till 10?
Of course, those folks might be away to work. They're not around anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Okay. Well, just wanted to see if anybody else had any thoughts. I mean, there's more houses closer to this pit than the other pits.
Okay, what we'll do when I get item number after number 22, uh, I'll ask each of you which you want to hold off on, and then ask for approval of the rest. So can we go to number 12 now?
Sure.
All right. Any objection or more discussion on 12 or 13? Great. Number 14. Number 15. Number 16. Number 17. Number 18. I'll have
I'm going to have to abstain on 18.
You're
Because
gonna
I
do
have a relative involved with that one. So.
Okay. And when Jody is talking to us, I'm going to ask how much excess right away we've got out there. Back in the day, her predecessor hated selling that stuff.
I think it's about a third of an acre.
Okay. All righty. Number 19. Number 20. 21. And 22. Okay. Jeff, you want to exclude now which ones?
Well, number 3, I can't support that one.
Okay.
Since I
Keep
said
going.
before, number 4, I'm going to have to abstain on one part of the 5, of one of the
Okay.
5.
And 5, you said you got to abstain too?
Number 18, I have to abstain. I have a relative.
Okay, number 4, number 18. All right.
And number 3.
3, 4, and 18.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Angie is able to talk to the board about item number 8 as well, if you have questions.
So should we wait until she's down here?
She's online. You can wait until environmental services is on the agenda, or you could do it now, either one. But you can certainly wait until environmental services is on the agenda.
Okay.
And Jody is also on the line. If you would want to visit with her, you don't have anything else with highway later in the agenda.
Okay. Let's continue to see what else people want out, and then we'll give Jody and Angie the opportunity to comment. Okay, and Steve, you've got number 11. You wanted how did you want to handle number 11, Steve?
Well, looking at the next one closest to it, they're from 6 to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday. That one expires 12/31 of 2038. This one would be 2030. I think they're 10-year permits. I don't know. Now, do we want this one going 10? The one right next to them that they'd crushing going till 8? And then the one further down going till 10. There's 3 in a row right there.
Great. Here's my thought on this. Steve, all I'm trying to do at this point is isolate the ones that will get further discussion.
Okay.
So I think with one motion, we can approve most of these, but we'll come back to that. And
Okay.
Jeff will get an opportunity to comment on his if he wants. You will too. Do you have any others that you want?
Oh, that was the only one.
Okay. That's progress or lack of therein. Joe, which ones would you want to see further discussion?
I'm good with talking about the gravel pit as well. The others, as far as discussion, can all pass. I did want to mention the one vacation home rental. That was the first one we had that was not on a lake, that was on a farm. So it's just a different change. So we may see
What
that
number
again.
are you talking about, Joe?
That was number 14.
Okay. What do you want to do about it? Not
Nothing,
specifically,
just
but you want, okay. It's
nothing.
okay with
It'll
you?
pass. Yeah.
All right. Any others, Joe?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Terrell?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. I think I'm fine. Okay. Third pass on this. Jeff, you wanted, can we vote on the rest? So all those in favor of everything except 3, 4, 11, and 18 or
So,
not?
Mr. Chair, do we need to make a motion for everything but those?
That's what I'm doing.
Okay, I thought you were just calling for a vote. We don't have a motion or a second yet. That's why I'm asking.
And item
Yeah,
item 8 too.
And
You did
item
say
8.
8. I think it's 3, 4, 8, 11, and 18.
And Mr. Chair, I'll be happy to move that since you're ready to move forward.
Yeah. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye, and should we do a roll call? Okay. I vote aye. Joe,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Carol.
Aye.
Okay. That's progress or lack of therein. Okay, going back to 3 and 4 then. Jeff, do you have anything? Well, and Joe was number 8. Go ahead.
Number 3, I'm going to have to vote against that if that's got to do with eliminating the newspapers totally.
Okay.
I'm just not comfortable with that. And again, we also have dead spots in the county. I don't think it's time for that yet.
Mr. Chair,
One crisis at a time. The way I read that is that they're looking for ways to advertise conceivably in addition to what we're doing now, as opposed to instead of. How do you guys read it?
I think if you read it, it says you got to do it for 6 months and then it would go away.
right. Yep.
It's eliminating it.
And Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
so I totally appreciate your concern, Jeff. My concern has always been hardly anybody reads the Cold Spring Record. So for a while, the reason why it was so hard to move to websites was the newspaper industry, understandably, was trying to keep smaller newspapers viable. And so there's been a big lobby to not allowing it to go towards more of an electronic version. We clearly use libraries and a whole lot of other things. I have to admit, if we were going to keep doing this, and I know, Mike, you probably wouldn't like this, I'd say we should be doing it in the St. Cloud Times because it is the largest of record, but it costs us a heck of a lot less to publish it in a paper that a small group of people look at. So to me, this is a complicated issue. I do think we've made great strides on, in a lot of ways, making it more accessible because of our website.
I think the Cold Spring Record does have a pretty good subscription rate.
Not compared to the Times.
Okay.
Nope, probably not.
Relative to these contested items, you folks want to vote on each individually?
Yes.
Okay. All right. All those in favor of approving number 3, say aye.
Wait, could I ask one more question? Does that include not publishing our minutes?
No, this is just for bids and RFPs and RFQs.
Solicitation of bids.
Right.
Okay, so it doesn't include not publishing the minutes.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay,
And
then
Mr. Chair, remember, we need to do a roll call every time we have a
Yeah, we'll
vote.
get there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, to expedite things on our roll call vote, could we go by district 1 through 5? And when the one before us has spoken, we'll just wait for our turn. That way you don't have to call.
Okay. For the approval of number 3, District 1,
Aye.
District
Aye.
2, no, District 3,
Aye.
District 4, aye. District 5,
Aye.
okay. That was easy. Number 4. Jeff, you're just saying you want to abstain on that?
I want to abstain on, there's technically 5 different licenses here. I need to abstain on the farming baseball one because I'm involved with that organization.
All
And
right.
I would vote yes on the other 4.
Okay. How about this, Jeff? If you just abstain on item number 4, we'll leave it at that. I think no one else has
Okay.
brought the issue up. And that does happen to us time to time. Stuff comes up that we have issues with. So a motion to improve number 4.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
All right. A second.
Second.
All right.
Second, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. Let's vote on this. District 1,
Aye.
District 2,
Aye.
District 3,
Abstain.
good. District 4, aye. District 5,
Aye.
all right. And Joe, I think you took care of number 6. Moving on to number 8, on the Gilixer milk and honey. That's continued until May, so that doesn't need action now. Is that my?
Well, I think if we just ask Angie to explain, Angie, can you come on?
Angie's not available.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Angie Bird.
Yeah. Hi, Angie.
Hi. So related to number 8, the commissioners can approve the planning commission's recommendation, which is to continue. And it'll be on your future meeting.
Okay. So does it need action now then?
It does. Yes, Mr. Chair, it needs action to continue.
All righty. Do we have a motion to continue number 8?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye. District 1,
Aye.
District 2,
Aye.
District 3,
Aye.
District 4, aye. District 5,
Aye.
all right. Steve, on number 11, how do you want to handle that? Don't get into selling and, explaining
Well,
this
I
is
guess
fair,
I'd be
that's not
okay.
fair, and they're building a space shuttle on number 4. What do you want to do, Steve?
I guess I'd be okay following the other permit for CJK where they're from 6 to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday instead of allowing it from 7:30 to 10 p.m.
All right.
I will mention as well, you folks didn't see that because at the public hearing, the 4 closest neighbors were there and they were strongly opposed to it. They would greatly appreciate it if it did shut down at 8 o'clock. I can tell you that.
Steve, do you want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion to accept the planning commission's action with the one change with the hours of crushing stopping at 8 p.m. instead of 10 p.m.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Great. All those in favor say aye. District 1,
Aye.
District 2,
Aye.
District 3,
Aye.
District 4, aye. District 5,
Aye.
all right. Then, is that all of them then? Anybody else got the right-of-way, the sale of the excess right-of-way? Do we want Jody to comment on that?
She's there.
Jody. Earth to Jody.
Good morning.
Hi, Jody. We want to tell us about the sale of excess right-of-way.
Well, and I know you had a question earlier as well, but this particular parcel we did try to sell one time before. The interested party who bought it or bid on it this time didn't agree with the property value, and we are bound by statute when we own real property to sell it for no less than 90% of market value, which we use the assessor's value to determine that unless the property owner who's interested wants to get an appraisal. So in this case, they did bid over the minimum bid amount, which was 90% of the assessor's value. And that's generally what holds up sale of remnant lots in other areas is the interested parties don't necessarily, they're hoping that they can get it for far cheaper than that 90% of market value. So we do work with them. And in this one, we found resolution, so now we can close on this parcel.
All righty. With that explanation, does there a motion to approve number 18?
I'll move
I'll
it.
move that.
Oh, go
All
ahead.
right.
I'll second.
Great. We have a motion to approve. All those in favor say aye. District 1,
Aye.
District 2,
Aye.
3,
Abstain.
District 4, aye, and 5.
Aye.
Okay. I think we actually got that done. I'm afraid to ask any more questions on the consent agenda, so we'll move on. All right. Human Services Board, I guess, would be next on that. The C1 is the Fraud Prevention and Fraud Control Services. Does anybody have any questions on that?
Yeah, I would like to see an extensive cost-benefit analysis of that. You know, what did they actually prevent? So, some sort of list at some time. We approved this year after year, and I've never really seen anything to my satisfaction.
What's the detail on the document here?
You know, what we're paying out, we prevented this fraud. It saved us this amount of money, that type of thing. You know, with all of the things that are going on at the state level that we're hearing about, and nothing is, nobody's held to account or anything up there at that level. I really would like to see a cost-benefit analysis here, an extensive one.
All right. I think I'm on. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Melissa Huberty, Human Services Administrator, and there are those 3 items. The first one is to renew the contract. It is required, and I can get that analysis to you. That contract does do quite a bit of work in the gateway services area, in the public assistance area.
So is there any harm done, Melissa, in holding this over to the next board meeting?
This contract, I would say we need to, I don't know why we would not want to approve to have the funding come in for it, and we can certainly do the analysis. This one goes through June 2020. And then it starts on the fiscal year again.
I have no problem with approving that if we are guaranteed an extensive cost benefit analysis.
Expensive or extensive?
Extensive with a T.
Oh, okay. I feel better already.
Slurping my leech.
Okay. And then we can approve it with the analysis forthcoming. If that's the case, a motion to approve.
Mr. Chair, are we approving the consent agenda for human services or that one item?
What would you suggest?
I would suggest we approve the human services consent agenda. If there's any other discussion, we could hear that from Melissa first, though.
A second.
Okay. All right.
I'll move it. Fine.
All right. Do you folks want more detail on 2 and 3 before we vote on this? If not, All those in favor say aye. District 1,
Aye.
2,
Aye.
3,
Aye.
4, aye. 5.
Aye.
Okay. Then we're back to the regular meeting. The next item is the COVID-19 update. Are Renee and Aaron in the atmosphere to explain this
They are.
electronically?
They are. They're going to appear before you.
All right.
Good morning, Karen Tufte here from Emergency Management.
Want to go ahead with that? What do we need to know?
We have Renee joining us as well, and she has some slides to be able to share some information.
Okay.
She's still muted.
All right.
Okay. And I think I can share my screen here with you.
There you go.
Okay, let me pull this presentation up. Okay, well, good morning. I'm going to share with you just some information about what's been happening. I want to start with background information though first. So in front of you is what our Unified Command mission has been. We review this every day as part of the work that we're doing in the Emergency Operations Center. But you'll see that, you know, we're really trying to work, we're really looking at slowing the transmission of this particular virus. There are vulnerable populations and infrastructures that we're really trying to make sure we protect, and then also provide guidance to the community. The first information, this is actually only information from yesterday. I don't have the current information yet today, but you'll see internationally that we're at about 2.4 million cases. And of those cases, we have about 167, almost 168,000 deaths. In the United States, we are at 761, almost 762,000 cases. That is almost a third of all the cases that have been occurring internationally. And then the deaths are at 35,000. That is about 21% of all of the international deaths. So we've talked in the past about the curve, and I think this is a good example of what we're trying to look for. Each of these lines are cases per day, and you'll see that we kind of see a little bit of a leveling off. So even though we have a large number of cases occurring each day, that number isn't continuing to grow. So I think there's some progress that's actually being made. And then, of course, this is the deaths in the United States as well. And again, you'll see that this curve looks like it's flattening off. Even though we don't want to see the number of deaths, if we can minimize the number of deaths, that's really one of our goals. This is the Minnesota cases by day. And you'll see that up until where we saw the 194 peak up, we were kind of gradually on this incline, and I think we're still on a gradual incline in the number of new cases in Minnesota. Although it's a little hard to tell, we may be leveling off. Just so you know, I think that spike and then that drop is a little bit of an artifact that was over the holiday weekend, and there was some delay in reporting. So this is the number of total Minnesota cases. We're at 2,470. Again, this is yesterday's numbers. At the bottom is the green line, and you'll see the actual numbers each day. And again, you'll see that gradual increase in that number that we've been seeing in the number of positives. And then, unfortunately, we're at 143 deaths in Minnesota. Again, you'll see at 413, we kind of had a little bit of a break there. That again was a delay, I think. But we have seen somewhat of a change in the last several weeks as it relates to the number of deaths, just a little bit higher. This is some information that the Minnesota Department of Health provides, and it's what we're watching quite closely here. It's actually telling us the number of hospitalizations. So that line that you see there, that continuous line, is the total number of cases that have required hospitalization. But the blue and that green line are the two that we're looking at. Those are the number of people that were hospitalized as of today, which was yesterday. And then of that, how many of those individuals are actually in the intensive care unit? And you'll see that it's about 126. Now, this is really important that we monitor this because of capacity issues as it relates to being able to respond appropriately medically to these kinds of cases. So we have 77 counties. 77 of the 87 counties have cases. You'll see there's just very few white pieces anymore. I want to direct you, though, to the bottom where it talks about the number that are hospitalized. So 53.2% of those individuals that are hospitalized are actually in the intensive care unit. We monitor this every day. Last week and the previous weeks before, we were at right around 45 to 48%, and now we're seeing a little bit of an increase. And this is important because of this. So this slide in the red circle there shows you our intensive care unit beds in the state. And the blue is actually what we currently have available. So we have 932 currently in place, in use, and our capacity is 122. Now, the red shows you what we can have ready in 24 hours, and the blue, the lighter blue, green, is what can be ready in 72 hours. So you can tell that we're getting close to the capacity of our normal intensive care unit beds that are available. So again, something that we're really monitoring closely. And then if you look at the upper right hand, just the percent of traffic, they're monitoring this. You can see it's gone down, which is what we want to see. The Metro has done better than what the statewide has done. I put this one in here just to show you the demographics, and I want to talk just briefly a little bit about what we're seeing. You can see by far the largest group of individuals that are ill are 20 to 64-year-olds. Yesterday, this slide was in our briefing, and it's the first time that we actually had enough cases to show 0 to 5 years and also the 6 to 19 years. Just showed up in briefing a couple of days ago. Prior to that, we had cases, but it was so small, it wasn't enough to show on the graph. But again, you can see we have all ages of individuals that have been infected. What is really interesting or important, I think, is that we look at that 69% of all of these cases are 64 years of age and younger. And if you look at the individuals in their median age as they're non-hospitalized, hospitalized, intensive care, and deaths, you'll see that that changes. So while we do have individuals that are 65 and older who are getting ill, you can see that for them, it's much more a serious disease. In fact, our median age for our deaths is 84. Our median age for non-hospitalized individuals is 49. So people that are younger tend to not have as serious a disease, but certainly can transmit it. And again, our vulnerable community, particularly our older adults, is where we're seeing the severe outcomes. These are Stearns County cases, and I'll give you a little bit of data about them. And you'll see that we kind of rode along there for quite a while, where we would get a case here and a case there. In the last week, we've seen a spike. We went up to 11 on April 16th, and by yesterday we were at 17. We are pretty much nearing the state as it relates to gender. So we have a few more female than male. And of course, our ages are, again, showing somewhat similar to what the state is showing in a younger population. And right now, Stearns County has no deaths related to this. I shared on a briefing last week, Friday, some information around the some modeling that's been done. This is a joint project that's been done by the University of Minnesota School of Public Health and the Minnesota Department of Health. And this is the information that they are using to determine, what are the next steps within the state. And I bring this up only to show you this scenario 4, which is kind of highlighted, is where we're at. This was as of April 10th when the model was run. But you'll see there's great variation in the weeks. But if you look at the days that we're going to peak based on this shelter in place that we've actually been doing, we're looking at July 13th. So this is not going to happen very quickly. This is going to be a long-term event that it's going to take us a while to continue to expand and open up slow enough so that we can monitor and manage the number of people that we anticipate will be getting sick. So just a couple things to outline kind of what's been impacting our response. You know that you've heard testing availability is extremely limited. And I think the governor's shelter in place has really been to try to build that testing capacity. So there's a lot more discussion now that looks like there's testing available so that individuals, so that as the governor wants to open up and allow more movement, that testing is going to be more available. One of the things that has taken a lot of time is that the guidance, because we know more as this event goes on, we know more about the disease, we know more about what happens. The guidance is changing all the time, particularly around personal protective equipment. So just keeping track of what the changes are is really difficult. And the supplies are strained. It's just about every supply is strained. It's almost impossible to get masks. It's almost impossible to get gloves. So supplies are constantly an issue in trying to get things that we need. We have the stay-at-home order right now, trying to anticipate what is next. And then just making sure that healthcare is able to meet the demands as the governor expands our mobility. So here are some of the things that we've been focusing on in the Emergency Operations Center. So we have isolation and quarantine. We've been really focusing in particularly around what is it that we need to do to help individuals understand and follow through with isolation and quarantine. We are looking at case investigations and how might we need to ramp up for that. Organizing the EOC for how we can respond. Do we need to expand, and who does that include, and what does that look like? Some targeted business outreach. We have some vulnerable businesses in our community that don't allow for, as the Commissioner of Health calls it, social distancing in a congregate employment setting. So how can we help those businesses? We have started an illness surveillance program with the St. Cloud Hospital CentraCare, and we're going to start getting some data out of there this week. So we're really excited about being able to see and track some of the illness that's actually happening within the community to get a better sense of what's actually happening here. We have donations, management of things coming in and things going out to places that need it. We have essential services. These are required activities that public health must do. We've targeted specifically foster care and then our vulnerable communities, particularly our homeless. We've done a lot of community messaging and continue to do that. I've got illness surveillance on here twice. I apologize for that. And then we have had the initial conversations around mass fatalities and what is it that we need to do in order to prepare for that, if needed. With that, I'm going to let Erin take over.
All right, thanks, Renee. As we move from our update, one of the next things on the board's agenda is the extension of our emergency declaration. And so just to have a little bit of background about why that's important for us. We know this is going to be a long-term response. It already has been and will continue to be, as Renee illustrated in her portion of the presentation. We also anticipate that we're going to see more executive orders from the governor. And being able to utilize our emergency declaration in coordination with our emergency operations plan, it expedites our ability to support these executive orders on a local basis. As well as we know that there is disaster declarations with FEMA, and this helps us for tracking purposes and being able to put the appropriate documents in place to be ready to support whatever needs FEMA may have or requests from us moving forward. We also know, as we can all appreciate, much like doing the board meeting through WebEx this morning, that we are not business as usual. And so the emergency declaration also allows us to respond to and meet the requirements that we need to do in order to support the community in this response. It also allows for the continued utilization of both the emergency operations plan and our continuity of operations plan that are key to our process as we unfold our response and recovery efforts in the community. So with that, do we have any questions for either Renee or myself this morning?
This is Terrell. I've got a question. And we've gotten to talk about this a little bit, but for the public, can you talk a little bit about our and the community efforts as it relates to those more vulnerable populations, specifically foster care and then vulnerable/homeless, knowing that it's a rapidly changing, I mean, you all are we're adaptive as a community and very nimble, but I think it would help for people to hear that if you would.
Yeah, so we've actually spent quite a bit of time trying to make sure that we're prepared in case we would have someone. So essential services, I'm going to back up just a little bit. Essential services require that we provide to those individuals what they need in order for them to stay in isolation and in quarantine. And most individuals can do that on their own. So we just assure that they've got what they need. But there is a smaller group of individuals that we need to help. One of them is our foster care children. So if we had a situation where a child was under the responsibility of Stearns County in a foster care, became positive, and the foster care provider could not care for that child, we have to somehow care for that child. So what is it that we're going to do? Where are we going to place them? And how are we going to provide those services? And then, of course, our homeless community, they don't have a home to isolate into. So we've been working diligently with the shelters in the community. So the Salvation Army Place of Hope, particularly in looking at what can we do to help them build capacity so that they can isolate those individuals within the shelter. And then what do we need to have in place in case there's overflow, so to speak, outside of that shelter. This is a 3-county effort. So we've been working with Benton County and Sherburne County. And in our foster care, we've actually been working with Wright County as well. So that piece of it is 4 counties. But working to say what are other locations in the area that we could potentially use. So we've had conversations with St. Cloud State. We've had conversations with Centricare around Passages as 2 locations that we could possibly put individuals that could not fit into Place of Hope. We've also supported Place of Hope in getting some additional grant dollars. And the city has also provided them with additional grant dollars to expand on-site in their location. So they'll actually have, by the end of hopefully this week, they'll have 18 rooms that they can actually isolate or quarantine people in. And we're hoping that'll be enough. And then what we would do is support those essential services on their site. But if for some reason 18 wasn't enough, then we would have to look at placing those individuals in some other location within our community. And then again, assure that there's essential services that are being provided. So as you can imagine, there's some complexity in this, just in the number of agencies that are homeless, that serve our homeless, that we're working with, and then also that four counties are trying to coordinate this.
Appreciate that.
Renee, hi. Say Joe Persky here. Say yesterday we talked a little bit at the briefing about our food processing. In particularly Jenny O, I believe, the board, we were out there last year and did a tour, and we saw the number of employees and also just the number of birds that come through there, 65,000 a day. Obviously we don't want to see the virus go through there, but we don't want that plant to be closed down either.
Right.
That's going to disrupt a lot of commerce because those birds have got to go somewhere, and people out beyond Melrose are looking to move product as well. So I don't know what our role is, but I for sure would like to make efforts as best we can to protect those workers and, keep that plant open, because we don't want to see what's happening in other places in the country happening here.
Right, Commissioner Persky and Mr. Chair, that's a really good segue into Aaron and I have actually spent the last several days looking at our current EOC structure and what is it that we need to do to expand to be able to address these growing needs. So we have developed a community outreach section, and that group actually is going to get started today. And their main task is to do business outreach and community outreach. And we're going to ask them to start with these ag businesses. There's some guidance that's come out from the labor industry in Minnesota through the Minnesota Department of Health on how to begin to address these types of businesses. As I said, the Commissioner of Health congregate businesses where, places don't have the doing the social distancing that we would ask. And so how do we help those workers? How do we monitor their health? How do we keep the plant actually going and minimizing or any risk at all of those individuals getting sick? And then if there is illness, how do we support that business? So we will be actually starting that work today.
Renee, this is Jeff.
Thank you, Renee. Appreciate that.
This is Jeff. I have some questions. You've 69% were 64 and younger that contacted the disease. Just to put that in context, what percent of the population is 64 and younger?
I honestly couldn't tell you what that is. I would have to look up what Minnesota's age group is. I could certainly get that information, Mr. Mergen.
And then the other thing is too that that's the population that's out and about and still working and probably more contact. And then you talked about the model that Minnesota uses, and my understanding is I've looked at a lot of these models, and Minnesota is the only state that uses their own model, from what I've seen. And have you seen the Washington model? These are all over the place.
Yes,
have
they
you seen
are.
the Washington model?
Yeah, I've looked at a couple different models. And you're correct, Commissioner Mergen. There are models all over the place. This one has been developed by the University of Minnesota, their School of Public Health, and the Minnesota Department of Health. But it is based on a model that had been used with SARS and MERS, which are also coronaviruses. Although there are similarities, they're certainly not the same as what COVID-19 is. That's what they based that model on as well. So, but yes, I have looked at, I don't know if I looked at the Washington, but I looked at some that the CDC had done, looked at different models. So, and I think I will claim that models are as good as the information you put into them. So the longer that this goes on, the more accurate information we can provide based on that model. And I did not put the slide in, but when I did the briefing, I did identify what the limitations are, and that's one of the limitations. I mean, it really truly is only as good as the information you put into it. So the longer it goes and the more information we have, the better the model is going to be able to predict. So, and I think that's why you saw the widespread in that slide that I was showing you. There was red underneath there, and it gave a long, wide range of when it could peak. So it could peak as early as April or into August, which is, I think, why we kind of picked that July date as kind of the middle part of what that range could possibly be.
And as I've looked at several of these models, they keep adjusting them, and they're widely wrong, and they keep adjusting them downward significantly.
Right, and I think that as time goes on, we'll as we can, because they're based on the numbers that we have. So how many cases do we have at this point in an outbreak from the first time we had a case? It's looking at the number of deaths and what does that curve actually look like. And I know even in the limitations that had been identified by the Minnesota Department of Health, a lot of our deaths have occurred in individuals that are in long-term care facilities. And is that skewing the data a little bit? So again, I think there are certainly limitations to that, but it's a way for us to get a sense for how long is this potentially going to happen and begin to make some plans moving forward.
And Renee, along with that, would you mind talking a little bit about, since these are only confirmed cases and since we still have such limited amounts of information, I know several people in our community are pretty certain they've had it, but they've never been tested. So if you could talk a little bit about what, since we're only being able to go off of what we know, including projecting what we think that means in a broader population. I know you said that the governor's hoping we're going to get some additional tests, but I guess I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about even, there's the testing in terms of who we can confirm as cases, and then it seems like we, at best, so far have mixed results with antibody testing, not in our state, but broadly. So it makes it harder with all of the models. I get that. Can you just talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So right now, on the one slide I showed you, it did actually identify the number of tests that we've been doing in Minnesota each day. And so I think the highest we've been able to get to is about 1,800 tests in a day. The governor, in some of his conversations and also in working with the Mayo Clinic, feel that actually what we need to have is at least the capacity to do 5,000 tests a day if we're really going to be able to get on top of how much disease is actually occurring in our community. We know that based on some of the data that's coming out from across the world, about 25% of all individuals are asymptomatic. So about a quarter of all of our cases would be asymptomatic, in other words, not having any symptoms. And so those are individuals we're not testing right now, because only if you're ill are we testing. So by expanding the testing capacity, we would have a much better sense of what's actually happening within our community. And again, that I think will give better information to guide on what is it that we actually need to do in looking at these executive orders and trying to open up our movement a lot more. The data that I had seen is that really what you need to think about, and again, this is just a projection someone has made based on some information that they found from across the United States and across the world, actually. But they're saying that if you need to take a look at your total number of cases, so let's just say Stearns County has 17 cases, you really need to multiply that by 100 to get at what you probably are seeing in your community. So we're probably more at 1,700 in Stearns County, excuse me, as opposed to the 17 that we've tested and we're seeing.
Thank you.
one other just thing I want to share, and I know that, excuse me, that there's been some questions about, well, if we look at the flu, how different actually is this? And from my perspective, I think there's two things that we need to remember. The first thing is this is much more infectious than what the flu is. So there's a model number that they're calling what's called an R naught, and it actually shows you how easily is this transmitted. And actually, this is at an R naught of 4, and I believe the flu is at 1. So what happens in that is just describing how easily is it transmitted from one person to another. So if you have one case, a person could easily infect 4 individuals. So, but the other thing that we have to remember is that everyone walking around right now with the potential risk for flu are only people that have not gotten it or have not been vaccinated and had a good immune response. So what we have is a good number of those individuals who are protecting the other people in our community from flu becoming a widespread disease. Unless you've been sick with this disease, no one has immunity. Absolutely every person, other than those people that have had it, is at risk for getting this disease. And so we have the potential for such a large group of people to become ill because everybody, other than taking that few people out that we've tested and know or have been infected, is at risk for getting this disease. And that, I think, is the piece that we have to balance as we're moving forward.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could for just a second, Commissioner Mergen, we were able to get the numbers that you requested about that 69% of the population. Based on the 2017 census estimate, that with the total population of Stearns County of 155,300 people, those that would be under 64 years of age would be 133,909 people. So that 69% would bring us in at 92,397 people.
But one more time. There are 155,000 people in the U.S. or in Stearns, and
Yep.
133,000 are 64 and under.
Correct.
So that would be of the population approximately what
93.
percent right off? And that's 93% are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that puts a little perspective on why 69% of the population that has contacted the disease is under 64. There's 93% of the population is under 64.
It also means we're skewing older with that in terms of
And then I had some questions too on the statistics that you presented with the U.S. I can't remember the exact number, where you said that I think it was about 20% of all cases were in the U.S., something like that. But
Yep.
confirmed.
from what I've been reading and things, China is not being totally honest with their deaths and their infections. And also, I've been trying to find the number of cases in North Korea. I haven't been able to find any there. So I'm not sure how valid those statistics are, if everything was known.
Mm-hmm. Commissioner Mergen, I totally agree with you. That is of the confirmed cases. The United
Of
States.
the reported confirmed cases.
Yes, yep, reported confirmed cases, yeah. And you are right. There are places for a variety of reasons. Some may be politically that they're not releasing that, and some are because the capacity and the infrastructure is not there, that testing isn't occurring. So Steve Hammes a couple of days ago sent an informational piece on Ecuador, who has really no infrastructure. And what they've been looking at is their actual death rate, which has exploded. And so they suspect it's probably COVID-19, but they don't have the capacity to test. And their healthcare infrastructure is certainly not there. So are there more than 2.4 million people in the world infected? Absolutely. I don't know how many more, but there certainly are. And if we would look at their 100 that they said, take a look at your total cases and multiply that by 100, you're maybe more accurate. Then, yeah, I totally agree. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair and Renee, I actually was going to bring up the same thing, Jeff. When we look at a number of places, including some places in our country in terms of capacity, there's much higher rates of death right now going on. And it's not, places don't necessarily have the capacity, but at one point it looked like China's had like 1 million more unexplained deaths. So there's that. Yep. The other thing that seems helpful, we always talk about total numbers of reported, confirmed, and Jeff, I think that's a really good way of saying it, reported, confirmed. It's the numbers, and that makes sense that a place like New York City is going to have then a really high number. But when we think about rates, then we start seeing some differences like with Sioux Falls or Martin County or I think that could be something that's a little challenging for many of us to wrap our heads around too, is that we could have some place that, has as Joe had brought up earlier, a packing plant or a poultry plant that a lot of people could get sick or congregate living. But that could be in a really rural area. So I guess we've started to see more heat maps and other things like that. I know for me, that's actually in some ways more helpful to have a better sense about what the heck's going on. Mm-hmm. No, meaning, obviously, when Martin County has really high, rates, that says something more than maybe Hennepin County's rates or even our rates.
And I do think that, we're hoping in the next several weeks that we'll have some really good data from this project that we're working on collaboratively with Centricare, because we're talking with as many ill people that are willing to talk with us, what their symptoms are when they started, when they ended, and that data is actually getting put into GIS. We should be able to do some heat mapping to see where are we seeing illness even in the community, and are there pockets where we see a lot of illness. We're hoping that we can also put information in around our positives. So again, if we see a positive and then a really large area of illness that's being reported in that area, that would actually maybe be we have the ability to do more testing. That may be an area that we want to do some testing in. Or if nothing else, doing some targeted outreach to those individuals. So.
All right. Anything else anybody wants to offer on this? The data gets better as we get more experience with this, as one would expect. But I think that in terms of various people's agenda, too bad that data abuse isn't a crime. I think we'd be a lot of people found guilty on this. But I appreciate that their estimates going into this would be really challenging to come up with to any degree of accuracy. But yeah, I think that there are folks that have taken advantage of this situation in the interest of attracting ears and eyeballs. Anything else anybody has? Appreciate this update. At some point when this is over, Renee, I'm sure this is occupying way more of your frontal lobe than you ever anticipated. But if you can come up with some ideas on how long-term we can benefit from all we're learning, that'd be greatly appreciated. That'd be a remarkable contribution to, and a pretty good exclamation point to your own career.
Yeah.
So, thanks for putting up with us.
Yep.
And if there's nothing else,
an item associated with this.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So I think and I'll let Dr. Williams speak to, the action item is related to the extension of the declaration, emergency declaration.
Yeah, it's the next item on the agenda, but I asked Aaron to articulate some of the reasons why we need this emergency declaration extended. The state's is still extended. We know that we're going to have to respond in a number of ways, both as our EOC works with the community and as an organization. And so we think it's prudent that you extend your emergency declaration so we can continue to respond in the ways we need to.
Okay, I would guess that's an action item. So we have a resolution in front of us to extend the declaration. Does someone want to move that?
Why do we have to do anything on this? Because it's according to what's in the packet, it says no action is necessary to extend the resolution. They're going to continue to comply with the governor's orders anyway. And we got a governor that's changing the goalposts and everything all over the place.
Commissioner Mergen and Mr. Chair, the board really has adopted two resolutions in response to this. And excuse me, one was to declare the emergency, which enacts our Emergency Operations Center, allows us to enact our continuity of operations plan, allows us to recover federal funds if they become available, those kinds of things. And that declaration had a date that it expired. And so this action expands that emergency declaration. The other thing that you did was really in response to the governor's executive order for the stay at home, so that allowed us to close down our buildings and move people off site and to get their work done. So arguably you wouldn't have had to do that second resolutions, but I felt it was important that the board sort of authorize some of those things to happen. And that resolution did not have an expiration date on it. And so that's the one that you don't need to take any more action on.
Yesterday, I listened to an interview of a local business owner and talked about how all of the decisions the government's making is not for the small business, but for the large businesses. For instance, this particular one happened to be in furniture sales, one of the department stores, a local department store. And he says, I have to be closed up. He's got more room for social distancing and all of that than Walmart or Menards has. Said you go in those stores and they're packed and he has to be closed. And Walmart can sell the couches, but he's not allowed to. So this extension, and we got Georgia and Tennessee are starting to really open up this weekend and doing it in safe ways. And I don't understand why we have to continue this. It's really getting out of hand. Yesterday, I had another email or text message from another local bar owner. It says, I can't make my tax payments in May, from one in Roscoe. And we're keeping them totally shut down for all practical purposes. So I think this has just gotten to be government overreach here, and there's a political agenda going on.
Well, Mr. Chair, just to be clear, your resolutions do not prohibit any businesses from operating or any of that. That's the state government making those executive orders and those declarations.
Exactly, but this would say we're supporting that.
No.
I would not.
That's the way I read
I would
it.
not suggest that. This is allowing our emergency operations to continue as we continue to respond to the crisis. We just heard from Aaron and Renee, and we know that this is going to continue, and we're going to have to respond in different ways.
And this is just going till May 4th, correct?
Right. And this permits us to continue doing the best that our staff can do to provide the services that we are required to do during this period, correct?
You know, we've already got St. Cloud Hospital is pretty much begging for people now to come to their emergency room. We've got doctors laid off. We've got hospital beds that hospitals are losing money big time.
So Jeff, I think their issue actually is they're not being able to do elective surgery right now. I mean, and people, it goes back to what's happening more broadly. This really just understand the frustrations you're feeling. I think many of us feel frustrated, and we want to keep people safe. I mean, it's hard to figure that out. I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to see our granddaughter before the next year is over, besides over the telephone, because they're too worried. Our doctors are too worried that she could get compromised and die. I don't think they're being alarmist, but are they being? I don't know what it means. I'm going to move this just so we can keep going and maybe we can keep talking about it. I'll move this agenda item.
All right.
I'll second that. And with seconding that, I just want to comment. I agree, Carol, this is not easy on any of us. And we're learning as a nation, we're learning as a state, we're learning as a county. I very much support being proactive than to be reactive. I would rather see us in this condition than see our ICUs overwhelmed and having people dying that can't get into the hospital. Mike and Renee and Aaron and on all the staff. I know it's not easy on any of our county staff doing what we're doing, and I just appreciate the work that folks are doing out there. So,
well, we're talking safety here, and I believe that it's gotten to the point where the cure is becoming worse than the disease. And it's gotten to that point. I think we need to make some sort of statement to the State Department. I'm not going to support this.
Okay.
I'll just react with, there are a number of healthcare facilities and elderly facilities across the country that they're dying so rapidly that they can't even keep up with the bodies. And I'm sure glad we don't have that situation here in Stearns County. And likewise with the processing plants. Let's try to keep the workers safe so that work can continue.
I think we have to put some faith in the general populace to do things on their own safely. I think they're more intelligent than what our state government is giving them credit for.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And if there's no further discussion, I think it'd be appropriate to vote.
I just have one question, Lee.
Okay.
So, Mike, this doesn't affect any funding that we could potentially receive if it's not approved through at least May 4th? Like federal or? Unmute your mic.
Sorry. I'm sorry. The May 4th date is the governor's, supposedly the end of the governor's shelter at home order. That doesn't mean that the declaration of emergency will end. So those are, again, two different things. The shelter at home, we have nothing to do with, of course. But the declaration of the state of emergency is important for us to eventually recover some federal funds if we had to. For example, if, as Renee and Aaron are talking about, having to lease property to house homeless or foster children, this would help us be able to recover those funds. And Renee and Aaron, if you could step in, that'd be fine.
Yep, and I'll bow to Erin. She certainly is much more knowledgeable about this than I am, but that is correct. The declaration allows us to be assured that when FEMA has funds available, that we can apply for and recoup some of those dollars. One of the things that we've been doing is making sure that what we put into place meets the FEMA guidelines as well, so that we do have a much better chance of us getting the full amount of the dollars. And Aaron, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add to that.
If not, I believe we still have a motion and a second on the table. I'm going to presume that the horse is approaching death. So all those in favor say aye. In District 1,
Aye.
District 2,
Aye.
District 3,
Nay.
District 4, aye. District 5,
Aye.
okay. Motion passes. You know, I really don't disagree with the point you're making,
No,
Jeff.
I don't either.
But what our dilemma is that where we're at here at the county level, our options are limited. Now, it makes sense to point this out to the public that we're aware of this stuff, but we don't have the alternatives that one would otherwise presume we got. That should take care of your items. All right.
Chair, is it possible to take a 5-minute break? Just,
Okay. We're going to break for 5 minutes, folks.
thank you.
Well, as I look up at the monitor, my four colleagues have positioned themselves in front of their monitors again, so I think we can resume this exercise of principle colliding with practicality. So our next item is the public hearing of the shoreland alteration in Richmond. And I think, Shelley, are you available to handle this matter? Shelley up? Shelley, you want to explain this situation to us? Turn yourself on, Shelley.
Mr. Chair.
There you go. You're with us.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. First item today is the after the fact public hearing for Christine Pfaff, and she should be on the line as well. So we have Nick Newman here to also go through the item. So it is an after the fact shoreland alteration, and we are looking to decide what you as a board want to hear from Christine Pfaff. You did receive information in your packet related to the agenda items, so please let me know what kind of information you need presented, and we can certainly share content if necessary.
Okay, what are the requests of the board for additional information on this matter? Joe, we're going to get your opinion anyway, so why don't you offer, since you're the planning commission, is your assignment.
If you take a look at the screen, that is what the property looked like prior to the alterations. There are a couple of issues that are very important to this process and our decision here. One is that there is another pending issue of non-compliance as far as the placement of that sand blanket and also the amount of impervious that exists on the property. But the Planning Commission had recommended that she remove the wall that is closest to the water and then restore the bank from the second wall on down. That was done through the motion and then the passing of that motion. Personally, I think if the motion would have been under the recommendation of Greg Berg, which is to just allow the top wall to exist and restore the bank, I think that would have probably passed. As you're looking at picture 328, it would be my recommendation is if you look to the right and to the left, that there is a natural bank there and it doesn't require necessarily the walls. And I would concur with Greg, and the reason that I had pulled it for discussion at the meeting was I would concur with Greg that leaving the top wall would be enough. Actually, it's more than we would have actually permitted had it come to us in the regular process, and then the banks and the shoreline be restored to where they were. Shelley, I don't know if you want to comment about the other compliances that were talked about initially or not, or how that plays into the whole picture of things as well.
I'd like to have Nick Newman present that information. So Nick, if we could add him in so he can talk to this item.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Nick Newman, Environmental Specialist with Environmental Services. Commissioner Persky, what was the question?
As far as the compliances with the impervious and the sand blanket, were those were other things that had to be taken care of as well before this permit could go through?
That is correct. The applicant has signed a compliance agreement with our department that they will be reducing the impervious coverage of the lot and removing the sand blanket by a date set this summer. So that has already been signed and is already underway to reach compliance in those areas.
Okay. I've got a good number of notes, and we could go through it picture by picture. Again, I would think our discussion is going to be whether we have one wall removed or two walls removed and allow the third one to remain. We can go through those pictures if you like. Otherwise, we should go ahead and let Ms. Pfaff, speak about the construction of the property, where she is with it.
I'm more interested in the facts on this relative to the opinions. I'm a little reluctant to get farther into this. I'd like to hear staff talk about this a little bit more, or describe this a little more, and what the possibilities are.
Mr. Chair, I can speak to that a little bit. So the retaining walls, it's about 16 cumulative feet of retaining walls across the 3 retaining walls. This was brought to the Planning Commission. It was an after-the-fact request. It was constructed without a permit. And as Commissioner Persky mentioned, the Planning Commission heard this on February 20th. The top 2 walls were recommended for approval, with the bottom wall to be removed and restored. The board, this first came to the board on February 25th, and you wanted to obtain more information from the applicant and to see why this project was undertaken without a permit.
Okay. Any other comments from board members or staff?
Who is the contractor?
Commissioner Notch, the applicant stated that they had done this work themselves, that there was not a contractor involved.
Oh.
Shelley, if I may, in order to construct walls over 4 feet, are they not to be engineered?
Yes.
So these walls weren't necessarily engineered then?
I'm going to let Nick talk to that, because I know he's had more conversation with the applicant about the construction.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Persky, the ordinance recommends that the walls are engineered if they are over 4 feet. It is not a distinct requirement that they are engineered, but oftentimes for these projects, when I meet with the applicants, we will put a condition on there that if the wall is going to be this large, that we would require that they're engineered, but it's not necessarily a requirement in ordinance.
So Nick, if we would have followed regular protocol, first of all, this plan would never have come through the Planning Commission. I don't see any way that it would have been approved, especially with the impervious and the impervious up on top with the large patio. But we would have obviously recommended that we would go ahead and have those engineered. Would that be true?
Yep, that would have likely been a requirement for anything of this size.
And so again, the applicant went ahead and just put this project in, and it's hard for me to believe one individual could do a project of that scale without work of a construction company.
I guess I have hopefully they're short related questions to what Stephen, Joe were asking about. One is, what is the current percentage of pervious? One is, my recollection is that the owner owns an asphalt company or something that would be kind of a related business. So just about knowing about permits or not permits. I forgot my third one. When I come back, I'll give it to you.
Okay, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Clark, that is correct. So 42% of the lot is currently impervious. The ordinance requires 25%.
Sorry, thank you.
That's okay. And ordinance requires 25% or less. And yes, the applicant has some relation with an asphalt company. They're actually proposing a pervious asphalt system that would adhere to the county requirements for the permeable surface policy.
And I did think of my third one. My recollection also was that there were other landowners on this lake that would have liked to have done something similar, but they were prohibited from doing this, or at least didn't do it because they believed they would not have been permitted. So since we were talking about neighbors with the rock crushing earlier in this meeting, I'm just wondering if there's anything else you can remind us about, because it's been a little while.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Clark, yes, there have been other requests on the chain of lakes around Richmond that have been denied previously for large retaining walls. There have been other similar cases where conditional use permits have been denied as requested.
Okay, thank you.
So Nick, if I can ask you a question. So you said there's pervious concrete. I mean, that's kind of what paving would be, not?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Notch, it would be a permeable asphalt surface. There are various forms of that. And as part of the permeable surface policy, it requires that there's an engineered sign off that it would retain the 1 inch of stormwater across the surface for retention. And we have specific standards on that in our permeable surface policy.
Okay, thank you. And then at bottom, whatever shelf or row, is there pavers on top of that one too?
Commissioner Notch, it's just on that one level that.
Because when you look from the upper view down, it looks like the bottom one has pavers on top too.
I mean, it is grass, but below that second wall. So it's only on that one level where there's those pavers.
Okay. It's picture on F1A if you're scrolling.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions or discussions?
Did they agree to the recommendations of the Planning Commission to remove that bottom wall and the blanket?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mergen, the sand removal and the impervious were a condition that was signed with the department. As far as the lower wall removal, the applicant hasn't, I guess, stated either way what their intentions or feelings on that were, because it hasn't been formally approved for them to be required to remove that wall yet. That's where the board approval would come into play.
Okay, because I noticed something here in all of the comments from all the neighbors. First time that I've seen something like this come through, where all the neighbors are in favor of what they did. Because apparently the county would have been okay with leaving what was there and having it eventually fall down and erode into the lake. That would have been fine. So I guess if it was up to me totally, I'd vote to let them keep what they've done there. I think it looks great. But I can go along with what the Planning Commission has.
Are they all neighbors? Are they direct neighbors or neighbors around the lake somewhere?
I think they were right next door from the indications I got.
And the thing is, when you see these come across, then the next one's going to say, well, I supported this because I want to do this.
I understand that aspect of it too, but I just kind of happened to notice there weren't any negative letters.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
There is public hearing testimony that is in your packet. If the applicant is on, you may want to hear.
Sure. So, Shelley, your request is what?
That we hear from the applicant.
Okay. The applicant plugged in, so to speak. The applicant would like to offer a comment. If there's no comment from the applicant, we can move forward.
Let me verify.
Second call.
If
Yeah, go
Nick
ahead.
heard from, I'm not sure if the applicant heard, Nick, if you heard the applicant.
The applicant does show up in, as Chris Pfaff, in the panelist.
Okay.
Are, so the applicant should be present.
And so do we just need to open the public hearing part then?
And then we would need to open the public hearing, correct?
Okay. This public hearing is open so we can hear from the applicant. The applicant want to talk about this situation? I'm going to have a heart attack here for a while, so. No comments from the applicant? Or are they not unable to connect with us? Is there a way to
She's muted.
They,
It looks like she's muted. I don't know if that's intentional or not. Okay.
can anybody tell? Our technical staff able to see if the applicant is involved in this?
The plan was to have them testify.
Would leaving open the possibility to the applicant, because this is an hour and a half past the time stated on the agenda?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I've just saw in the chat that it says she doesn't have audio. So I'm not sure our best way to moving is. We can't continue this to your next meeting because unless we get an applicant to sign in writing a waiver
Okay.
because of the 60-day rule.
Okay.
Isn't she able to call in as well? A phone
That's
number?
what I was going to ask.
I don't know if Janet set up a phone line for them to call in.
Can she just chat if she'd be okay with that? Signing that?
How about this?
We could continue it to 5/5 if you have your meeting on May 5th.
We will.
All right. Then a motion to continue so the applicant can testify on their own behalf. Somebody willing to do that?
I'll move that.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. District 1.
Aye.
District 2.
Aye.
District 3.
Aye.
District 4. Aye. District 5.
Aye.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, just before we close the item, I'd just like to respond to Commissioner Mergen's comment about leaving it as is. This applicant did this work extensively without a permit. And to leave it as is, I would say that just opens it up for people to blatantly do whatever they want on their property. For example, to clear cut all the vegetation, to put in whatever they want. If you look on both sides of the property, there's vegetation on the shoreline. She took that out and just dumped sand there. Where are we going to go with this if we just allow it to happen? Again, there was a total disrespect and disregard for the process we have in place. And one last item, if it is possible, I guess I would encourage you to get out and take a look at the property if it's possible.
Anything else? Joe, we continued the item. You're going to get another at bat. Take a deep breath, take 2 aspirin, get to bed early. I understand you got opinions on this, but we're going to move on. Let's see.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Shelley.
We have the next agenda item. If you'd like to move to that, that would be item G1. And Mark Lateral would be the staff person who can go through that item and the next 2 after that.
Okay. Mark?
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Morning.
I'll be item G1. This item is basically an informational item. It's I'm here this morning just to inform the board that the county needed to enter into an agreement for 2020 and 2021 in order to receive the SCORE funding that we normally receive. The Minnesota Pollution Control Agency has recently made adjustments to the SCORE program, specifically the use of a grant agreement for the disbursement of the funds. So that agreement was provided to us back in the middle of March. We provided it to Randy Schwartz, who is the county designated signee for this. It was signed and returned to the Pollution Control Agency on April 2nd, and that'll carry us through to June of 2021, which then will also then re-sign a new agreement that'll take us out until 2025. Again, this is just to receive the typical SCORE funding that the county has been receiving multiple years now.
Okay. Doesn't sound like that action. We need additional action on that.
No action, just informational.
All right. Inaction is something that we can do pretty well. Next item, Mark.
Sure. The second item I have for the board this morning is a request for the board to approve the 2020 amended SCORE budget. Back when we were doing our 2019 overall budget process, the board approved a preliminary budget for the SCORE, the Select Committee on Recycling and Environment SCORE budget. Once we know the carryover dollars from the previous year, we typically put together a amended budget and present it to the board for consideration and approval. I have that amended budget to you this morning for consideration. If you have questions, I can certainly try to answer.
You have questions for Mark?
Hey, Mark, I just have a question. Can we get a tally of the amount of hazardous waste we get to come through in the course of the year?
We certainly can. I don't have that at my fingertips right at the moment, but we can get.
I don't need it today. I just maybe before the next meeting, if we could just get an update on what has actually come in.
Sure. We can certainly do that. We can provide. You just want quantity numbers. Is that what you're?
Sure. Just the items, as far as maybe like lawn chemicals, paint, explosives.
Quantity and types. Okay, got it. Sure.
Okay. We still would need approval though, correct, Mark?
Correct. I'm seeking approval as for the amended budget as proposed.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve Mark's request?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second with a question.
Okay. What's your question, Steve?
On G2A, HHW disposal, looked like the amended budget had nothing, and now it's going back up to 250,000. Can you explain that? Was it removed in 2019 and then brought back now?
The 250,000, right? So HHW's disposal. So in 2019, we shifted that cost to the environmental service fees, and it was paid out of there for 2019. So we went back into the SCORE budget for 2020. That's why that 250,000 is there in the HHW disposal.
Okay. Any more discussion on this item? If not, a vote would be appropriate. All those in favor say aye. District 1?
Aye.
District 2?
Aye.
District 3?
Aye.
District 4? Aye. District 5?
Aye.
All right. The next item is a abatement update.
Correct.
Mark, you want to lead us through that?
Sure, correct, Mr. Chair. Again, this is informational for the board this morning, but it is an update regarding the hazardous property abatements that have been done out at the Evergreen Mobile Home Park in Avon. Last September, the board approved and signed a abatement for the removal of 3 homes that were there. We had gone through, done the asbestos checks, the asbestos removal, and we did complete the removal of the homes in March the 25th and 26th. So those 3 structures have been removed from that's cleaned. I do just want to make the board aware there are 2 additional homes that have been posted as hazardous or non-livable structures, and staff are working towards a resolution with those. So there'll potentially be an additional 2 homes to be removed from the park.
Okay, and the appropriate action then would be?
It's just informational for you this morning, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
To follow up to the board's previous action.
You got a sense of when that'll be wrapped up? It seems like this matter has been around for a while.
There's with that particular mobile home park, there's going to be a lot of conversation, I think, that we'll need to have in order to get to a final resolution there. So, time frame, I do not have a time frame.
Sometime proving once again, Mark, that sometimes the best politicians don't hold elective office.
I'll take that as a compliment.
You can take that as a compliment or a criticism. I'll leave it to be your choice.
All right, thank you.
Tim?
Mark, if I may comment, I've had a couple of people call me about that mobile home park, and their concern is the amount of money and time the county is putting into taking care of that, and how that actually becomes a burden on the taxpayers and not necessarily on the owner of the park.
Sure, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Persky, I can tell you as far as the costs that were related to the abatement of the 3 homes that we just concluded, those fees through the resolution that was passed, those fees will get assessed to the property taxes, and it will be a responsibility of the property owner to pay those. Yes, the county is fronting that cost. However, it will go on to the property.
Okay, I appreciate hearing that.
Okay. Now can we hear from Tim?
Yep, Mr. Chair, we will go through the next agenda item, which is agenda item 4, authorize Tri-County Solid Waste Coordinator to pursue contract for egg plastics.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm here today to ask the board to authorize Tri-County to enter into contracts with West Central Sanitation and Waste Management to collect egg plastic material for recycling purposes. This year, we decided to split the Tri-County service area into 2 separate districts, hoping to improve service, and we received 2 separate bids for that, and that's for the reason for the separate contracts. So I'm here to entertain any questions you may have on that. The prices did go up from what we were, seeing last year. We anticipated that. We are asking the participants in the program to pay the collection costs, and we're asking the county to pay for the baling costs and the placement and removal of dumpsters is all.
Okay, do we have any questions for Tim?
Mr. Chair, I'd move the recommended action.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second.
I'll second. Okay.
Okay, if there aren't any further questions, voting would be appropriate. District 1?
Aye.
District 2?
Aye.
District 3?
Aye.
District 4? Aye. District 5?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Tim. And then I guess the next item Becky will be covering.
Yes, so hopefully Becky is on the line and ready to go. and I am not sure if she is there.
Good morning. This is Becky. Can you hear me? I am here.
Okay.
I think we can hear you. You might want to speak up.
Oh, okay. Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. The item before you is a resolution to provide regulatory relief for feedlot-related ordinance provisions. As you had mentioned, or as was mentioned earlier, the processing plant closures related to swine are occurring at this time. And with that, the state Minnesota Pollution Control Agency is granting permit flexibility for 45 days without a wait for approval. And as long as those owners submit an email to the state and provide some basic information. The county will receive a copy of that information. The state will be looking and assuring pollution potential and hazards before they forward that email to the producer and to the county. So this resolution is just purely for providing relief for ordinance provisions such as permitting, registration, perhaps setbacks, anything that would allow some producers to hold back animals and keep them on site longer.
Okay. Any questions of Becky on this matter? If not, adoption of the resolution would be appropriate.
I'll move to adopt.
All right. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. District 1.
Aye.
District 2.
Aye.
District 3.
Aye.
District 4. Aye. District 5.
Aye.
All right. The next item, Angie will talk about Planning Commission action.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. So the next item on your agenda is the rezoning. The County Planning Commission heard last Thursday. It's to rezone property owned by RDP Investments, LLP, and if approved, ordinance number 601. The Planning Commission did recommend approval of this request on a 5-2 vote. Jeff Bertram and Mike Farrell voting against the motion. The findings of fact were listed in your Thursday. And what I would like to add is that the applicant in this case has asked for the board to continue the final action, so your action on this item for 6 months. And so if the board would be amenable to that, the action today would be to continue this item for 6 months, and then we would bring it back to you at that time.
Clarification on that, Angie. Then the Planning Commission's approval is good for a year, correct?
Mr. Chair, the ordinance actually doesn't specify how long their action for is valid.
Okay.
What Shelley and I and Jennifer believe to be the case in this application is not to continue longer than the 6 months. We're reviewing our comprehensive plan and specifically reviewing it for township growth. So we didn't want to have this rezoning be out there for so long after we come up with some finality for St. Wendell. So that's why we're asking for no more than 6 months.
Okay. So going forward, we would be handling this on a case-by-case basis, correct?
That's right, Mr. Chair.
All right. Well, then the appropriate action would be what, Angie?
Mr. Chair, the appropriate action would be to table the request for up to 6 months, and the department will bring that to you. We'll look at the 60 days and we'll look at the board meeting time. We'll put that back on your agenda.
Thanks for the clarification. So, can we have a motion to table?
So move.
And a second.
Second with a question.
Okay.
Angie, does this present any type of a problem for staff or complications for staff, or just procedurally that we're doing it this way? Will this be standard practice? Do you have an opinion on that?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Persky, it's not a standard for the property owners are very motivated once they receive an approval to get on with the development. So I wouldn't worry about it. If we continue to have a request for something to go out, 3-6 months or longer, then we may want to look at our ordinance and having a time frame written in. At this point, I would.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Then we've got a motion to table. All those we did vote on it, right?
No.
We didn't? Okay. All those in favor say aye. District 1.
Aye.
2.
Aye.
3.
Aye.
4 says aye. And 5.
Aye.
Okay. I'm wondering, long run, like we need more new things to consider, just as a matter, not protocol. I don't want to make this a requirement, but when we have properties that are in the immediate vicinity of a municipality, ask them for an opinion. We can vote the way we want, but what do you guys think? But that's for down the road.
That's a good idea.
What?
That's a good idea.
Ooh, that's scary. We're agreeing on something.
That's what I thought.
That did come up for discussion at the planning meeting, because the location of this property is, it's overfolding between Sartell, St. Cloud, Leasock, St. Joe, St. Wendell. All those municipalities kind of come together at this location.
Yeah, it's right at a corner of St. Wendell Township.
Okay. The next item then would be, I'll ask a couple of things. We have the potential, if we'd want, even though it's not on the agenda, before we conclude, to have a solar discussion, but it's not on the agenda, and the staff has prepared some stuff. If you want that on the next agenda, just by agreement, would that be the best way to handle it and move on to the auditor treasurer stuff?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I'm not really sure why, but I have 9 hours of these today. So
9 hours of what?
These kind of meetings today.
Oh, you do?
Yep.
Okay.
Already into the third one. I'm not obviously doing them because this is the important one.
All right. Well,
Carol, switch to decaf.
We have an
I'm not drinking it.
Terrell, you qualify for the employee assistance program, so if this drives you crazy, we can help you out.
Oh, no. This is all fine. I just mean there are too many meetings. It's fine.
Whew. You're tougher than you look, Terrell.
Thank you.
Randy?
I think.
Randy, you want to lead us through the discussion on property tax penalty possibilities?
You lose it?
You lost interest. No pun intended.
No, he didn't. He's there.
All right. Randy?
We've been seeing him the whole meeting, but
Right.
Yeah.
Right across the hall.
someone's going to check on him.
As long as maybe I should wait till he's here. Just see what our neighboring counties did.
Well, I just had word during our meeting that Sherburne County approved the same policy today at their meeting. There's been, and Randy can go into it more, but there's a number of the counties in our area tentatively agreed to make this policy presentation to those various boards.
I'm leaning toward following the example that Hennepin County has set and just say, hey, there's no penalty for 2 months. It's the government that put these people in this position, and government shouldn't be further penalizing them too. Because I got a call yesterday from, might be in Steve's district, I don't know, from a bar owner in Roscoe. It's right on the borderline anyway. Said he can't make the payment on May 15th. Then we're going to, so it comes in late, and then we're going to penalize them.
Should we do issues by commissioners otherwise if we're waiting for Randy?
Yeah, go ahead. Great idea.
You want me to start?
Damn right.
I was just going to top off the Revolution Plastics topic that Tim brought up earlier. I did have some farmers call and actually, because basically west of County Road 9, all the way down to Cold Spring would be in District 1, which would be the $48, and then east would be the $70. And they're like, it costs us roughly $25 a month, $300 a year. They'd have no problems with the fee. So hopefully the service is good this year and it works out well.
All right. Any other
I don't know if we're going to be able to do this.
By commissioners?
I had one thing.
All right.
It's something we've all probably seen. NACO really is putting out a pretty significant push to have us contact our congressional delegation with regard to whether it's this next law they're going to pass with funding or the one after that is included within it. The ability for counties to directly obtain funding, whether it is retroactive or for expenses not yet, that we're working on. The issue has been that only some of the largest counties have been able to do that with anything that's passed, and the longer this goes on, it's relevant to this conversation. If we have challenges with collecting property taxes and needing to continue mandated services, that we're going to need the feds to do something. So just thought I'd bring that up because it is rather odd that they haven't done anything with regard to state and local government at this point, or county and local government.
Okay. Do we have any other items by commissioners? I have a question.
Mr. Chair, I don't have anything, just to compliment you, Lee. I think you did a nice job on the meeting. I think it was very well orchestrated as far as the technical things, considering what we have going on. And I just want to say I appreciate that. Other than that, I will make a confession that this is the first meeting I've ever done barefoot in all my years in politics.
Oh, I'm glad you're comfortable. Jeez. Yeah, we wouldn't have noticed this unless you stood on your head. I want to see that one.
Pants on.
You must have indoor heat.
All righty. What did you figure out there, Dr. Willie? How do we bring Randy on board on this?
Mr. Schreifels is getting set up right as we speak. He should be available soon.
Okay. All right. Okay.
No go, huh?
Why? We tried to forget about Randy, but he just won't go away. So.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, but if I was any closer, I'd be sitting in your lap.
Okay. So we know a number of property owners are having trouble making, or will have trouble making, the first half property tax payments. The other part we have to keep in mind is Property taxes are the main source of revenue for our local governments. And it's difficult to determine the taxpayers that are struggling and are not. We know small businesses are, but also ag is also struggling. Then Minnesota Statute 279 does allow the county board, with the concurrence of the county treasurer, to abate penalties. So that's what we're looking to do today. Current penalty rates are 2 to 4% for homesteaded properties and 4 to 8% for all other properties. And then July they go to 5 and 9%. Settlements begin May 25th, and then they continue on until July, the beginning of July. I guess some other information that's appropriate here. The first half due is $125 million, with escrows being $31 million. And currently we have about 57% of the collections already. If you include the escrows, the properties that pay over $100,000 in taxes and utilities, along with the current collections, then we get up to the 57%. So the two options that I shared with our local jurisdictions was, the first one is to forgive all penalties, either to June 30th or July 31st. The concern out there is, again, the local governments need that money to operate, and cash flow could be a problem with that. We get typically about 95 million of the 125 million in May. So taking some action today on this option could delay those property tax payments and then affect their settlements. So 9 of the local jurisdictions did respond. 1 wanted to do this option. 6 of them wanted to do the reducing the penalty. And then 2 of them didn't really care. We were fine with the board's decision. The second option is moving that penalty from as high as 8 or 9% to 1% for all properties through the end of June, and then go to 2% in July. And this is the action that a number of central Minnesota counties are taking. Wright and Sherburne both passed this. Benton, Meeker, and Morrison will be considering this option also. So with that.
Okay, comments by board members. Jeff, you offered an opinion.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add to that?
Well, cash flow is currently a problem for these families and these businesses that, for no fault of their own other than the government decree, are having these issues. And I don't think that we should be further penalizing them if they can't make a payment. The government further penalizing them for something that was totally caused by government. And I don't think that's showing much compassion, nor is it morally proper. So I think follow what Hennepin County has done and just say, hey, you have until July 15th to pay with property taxes without a penalty. And like Randy said, there's a good share of it already. It's escrowed, and that's what, and I know Ramsey County is expected to pass that same resolution until July 15th. So a 2-month extension. And that's what I would support. And I wouldn't vote for anything, with a penalty involved.
We did talk, the other central Minnesota counties, and the auditors met and went over this. And having consistency with your neighbors is an advantage for the taxpayers and not having that confusion. Going down to 1%, the reason for that is people that can pay will pay, and so we think that we'll get most of our collections by the May 15th deadline. It is possible after the May 15th deadline to come back to the board and revisit the issue if you like.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
That actually was going to be my question is if we move forward at 1%, do we have the ability to come back if it looks like we see circumstances may make us want to reconsider it? And then the other question I had, I believe that there's been conversations with school districts as well, some concern about if those who are able to pay not paying, the impact on them.
The school districts have the earlier settlement, so they get settled the end of May and by June 5th. And those are the ones where there's a lot of concerns. There certainly is some cities that have concerns too because they have bond payments and stuff to make. So that's the concern with the local governments and not getting their settlements in a timely manner.
And this is those are, I guess, factual related information or questions. I certainly agree, Jeff, with a significant part of your sentiment. Having said that, I think for those who are able to pay, we want them to make sure they're paying and not delaying. And it seems like going to 1%, especially with us having an ability, if there's some significant issue of revisiting this in between.
I've seen all kinds of breakdowns of different percents burdened by ethnic, race, and everything else. One thing I've never seen broken down is what financial burden of this has been over the private sector versus the public sector. I would like to see those statistics. I think the private sector probably has had to involve about 99% of the financial burden.
Well, if there's not enough collection, would they just prorate it for what's come in?
Yeah, we'll certainly settle out 100% of what we get in during those normal times, and then after we'll settle out what we have also. So we will do that, yes.
And most places should have contingency funds as far as schools and cities, not reserves like we do.
Well, schools certainly aren't going to have the fund balance that we have. They run a lot tighter operation.
Randy, I guess I would like to support the extension through July, if that's possible. And I would like to also maybe do some PR and encourage those people that can pay to make sure they would make the May 15th deadline. It would be everybody making sure they help out. I think that would be the best scenario if we could allow it to go to those people that are definitely in dire need to go through the end of July. I would support that. I have a question on the penalties. Are those penalties whether you're 1 day late, or is that a penalty that is accrued interest for the number of days that you're late?
It's a penalty, right? If you're 1 week late or a month late, it's the same. So it doesn't accrue on a daily basis; it accrues on a monthly basis. But with what we're saying under like the option where we're reducing the penalty, it would be 1% if you paid on June 29th. It would only be 1%. So, and we could take that 1% and go to the end of July rather than ramping it up to 2%.
Don't most of you feel though we're going to get the needed monies coming in either way? That it isn't even necessary to impose a fee.
Well, isn't what we're proposing is reducing the penalty? I mean, the penalty is normally in place. What we're proposing is significantly reducing it or not having one. I mean, certainly in my heart, I'd love for there not to be one, but I mean, going to 1% is actually a pretty significant reduction of the regular penalty.
I wonder what percent of the people will even be aware that there has been an extension made.
Oh, I bet they will be. It's kind of like with federal income taxes. I think most people know that has been.
Maybe it's in the Cold Spring Record.
Then everybody will know.
Your large companies are going, in my opinion, are going to pay. It's going to benefit smaller people. businesses, individuals by not having it. And these late fees are county by county, right? The state mandates when the collections are due. The counties are the ones who put the interest and late fees on, correct?
But it's a state set late fee.
Okay.
Yep. So it's the same for everybody, and that's what we're trying to do in central Minnesota is get the counties all on the same page. And as we've heard, Sherburne and Wright have already taken that action. The other ones will probably soon.
Okay. This is a better discussion than I anticipated. Good job, folks. What else do we have to offer on this?
I'm wondering about modifying, because you brought it up, is modifying it to be 1% through the end of those two.
Through the end of July.
Yeah.
I'd be fine with that.
Because I think, again, to me, it's just that little bit for somebody who can. I mean, I know, Lee, you were talking in the MICA board meeting about what you've been encouraging businesses to do, but let's face it, if somebody really can't do it, we don't want to put them in a bad spot.
And I also can bring this back at the May 19th meeting and see what we have for collections and who hasn't paid. And if the board's interested in doing it, something different at that point, we can look at that also.
So are you saying we could hold off?
No, I think we should do something today. But at the same time, I'll bring back more information at the end of May to see where we're at.
Can I ask one more question with that is would you be able to have some kind of breakdown between, residential, small businesses?
I would, yep.
Okay, because I think it seems like, for a number of us, we're concerned about those businesses that are smaller that may just really be.
Well, yeah, any other comments?
Well, are you looking for a motion?
No, because I haven't spoken. The reason I'm holding off on the comments is I would have thought in any other situation by now in a discussion like this, someone would have asked the question, what are our, meaning Stearns County's reserves?
That's why we have you, Lee.
Huh?
That's why we have you here. You think of the things no one else does.
Well, I'll share my medication with you sometime, Jeff, and maybe you'll find it helpful. But when we first started talking about this, and we got we got questions like, "What about this? What about that? Oh, this outfit needs this money and that outfit," and so on. The reality is I've consistently complained about budget reserves. And so now I'm, like, as I indicated at our last meeting, kind of have to eat my words. I'm glad we got them. But at some point, I don't think it's inconceivable that if we have to make up any shortfalls, it doesn't put Stearns County in any significant financial liability to do so. And number two, I thought it was absolutely remarkable at the MICA meeting, and I'm glad Terrell caught this. I was really disappointed in my esteemed colleagues' reluctance to talk about short-term borrowing should they have any shortfalls because of situations like this. And, number one, government can borrow cheaper than the private sector can, which is, I was surprised there too that didn't come up, because if we have entities out there that have to borrow money to pay taxes, they're going to pay a higher rate than we are. And you can say, well, if they charge a county interest, short-term borrowing, that's a pass-through. And my subsequent comment would be, yeah, we borrow at a better rate than they do. But anyway, you get the drift. And I'm surprised that didn't come up. but I don't think expressing my frustration has necessarily added anything to the discussion. So I feel better. This is your wonderful therapist. What do we want to do?
Well, I would move that we delay payments for 2 months till July 15th for anyone that wishes to.
You mean penalties?
What if Stearns County had to contract as much as some of these families and businesses had to? How would that work out?
Jeff,
And then we want to further penalize them? My motion is just to, instead of May 15th deadline for property taxes, make it July 15th. Simple
we're
motion.
not making the penalty, not keeping the date that they're due and just not having a penalty. You wouldn't even say they're still due. Okay.
Well, is there a second?
I'll second it.
I don't know that there is a right way or a wrong way. This is one of those situations. Well, this is like the whole meeting. You're damned if you do and damned if you don't. But nevertheless, that's where we find ourselves. Is there further discussion on this?
I think it might be in part semantics, but Randy, are we even able to actually change the due date?
No.
We're really, in essence, what we're doing if we have no penalties is allowing people to pay later without a penalty. But I don't think we can actually change the due date.
I don't think we can either.
Right.
Right. And if we are looking at this option, I think we should exclude those paid with escrows, those taxpayers over $100,000, and utility properties from this. I think they all need to, they have the ability and they're paying. I think those need to be excluded.
So the taxpayers over 100,000, those would be the big businesses? Is that what you're talking about, Randy?
Right.
Okay.
And then
those are still in business.
And those with escrows and the utility companies, I would also exclude from this.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Quick question, Randy. Then are we going to would we have to, under any scenario, touch into our reserves to be good with everybody?
Well, we can't cover this kind of shortfall for those jurisdictions. It's $125 million. So, you know, the county will be fine with our cash flow, but we can advance county funds to help those to this kind of an amount. So.
Okay. So we can get by with smaller reserves. Thank you, Randy.
Well, Stearns County can, but the issue is not Stearns County's cash flow, it's the other taxing jurisdictions.
My concern isn't about our county. It is literally about those school districts and some of the smaller jurisdictions.
Right, and even the city of St. Cloud and Sartell both had considerable concerns about the settlement and what they get. So,
right.
Is that because of debt levels?
Well, my heart is where you are, Jeff. I will be voting no on this solely because of those concerns. I think if we could move to a 1%, we've given enough incentive for those who can't afford to. And then I personally was going to suggest then we relook at some forgiveness, figure out, I was going to ask Randy if there's a way that we could do some forgiveness of the penalty for a class of entities. Should we see that, you don't want to do it case by case, so I don't know what the right way to do it is, but clearly for those who can't make this work right now, I've got real concerns about that. But because of the school districts and others, I mean, we're basically just conduit. We're not, this isn't our money.
Randy, if you exclude those larger taxpayers and escrow, and now I can't even remember what the other one was, but
utilities. Yep.
Utilities. How much revenue protection is that for us? Do you estimate?
That is something I gave yesterday. The escrows, the $100,000 or more taxpayers and utilities are 59 million of the 129 or 127 million. So it does help. The concern would be is if collections do drop off, the settlements are going to be lower, and then the need for those jurisdictions.
All right, so 59 million out of the 127, that's close to 40%. And a 2-month extension, that's only 1/3 of the time period. They shouldn't be spending more than 40% over that 2-month time period if they're budgeting so long. And they have a little bit of reserve, should be able to operate within this and still let families and businesses that are struggling not be penalized and giving them a little bit of a cushion.
Back to Commissioner Clark's question. Certainly, if we did the reduction of the penalty to 1%, I could bring something back the end of May to see where we're at and see if there's other considerations the board would take into account at that time.
Randy, I'm assuming that we're going to be doing something like this again, the second half taxes, since the economy is severely damaged here. Does that come into play at all, or really we would be okay by then, you think?
Yeah, we may be back here in October looking at the same thing again. I like the 1% option, and that's what I've been talking with the jurisdictions about, and they seem to be favoring that option also. I don't know what the collections are going to fall off with this, so it's a guess if I made any prediction.
Thanks.
This has been a pretty good discussion, but don't we have a motion on the table already? And if you want to change that, I know Jeff made the motion, and I already forgot who seconded. I think it was Steve. But if you guys have a different idea now, you got to take that back. So what do you want to do?
I would go along with the motion that I made with the adjustments that Randy suggested of over 100,000 in taxes, not exempting them, not exempting escrow, and not exempting utilities. If Steve's okay with that as a seconder.
Yes.
Really? You guys agreed? I got a pacemaker, you guys. Take it easy on me.
Just before we go, just because this will help me with my vote, Randy, what do you believe the impact of that would be on the school districts or those smaller communities? The school districts obviously start paying out pretty quickly. That's the reason why I'm asking. Or do you think we've minimized it based on what you've put in there?
What we put in there would minimize it. It's unknown, the effect on the school districts. And I don't know their financial situations. I just know school districts do not have big reserves because the state does watch that for them. The school districts are under more financial scrutiny than other jurisdictions. So this can have a bigger effect, and their settlements are sooner because of that. That's why they have an end of May, beginning of June settlement, because they need their money sooner. So
right, and I have heard from school districts about this. That's why I'm asking.
But you're talking 1% penalty.
Right. No, we're talking about whether somebody has incentive if they're able to pay or not pay. That's really all it is. I mean, I totally agree with what you all are saying. It's a balance. It's a balance between those who are able and not choosing to do so and those who are unable. I would like to figure out how we can best minimize for those who are unable to, because I think we've got some bigger concerns than just what the timing of when they're paying their property taxes are versus those who are able that says, okay, there's a window, I'm going to wait. That's for me, it's a balance.
So Steve, this motion is total forgiveness of penalty until July 15th, right?
Oh.
And I'm concerned about that because of the balance, not because some can't afford it and I don't want them to have to pay for it. I don't want those who can't afford it to pay for it.
It's 1% on an annual basis?
It's 1% of the tax that's owed.
Based, but not calculated daily, monthly,
No.
but annually?
Right. So if they owe
Oh,
$1,000, it would be $10.
Yeah, so in reality, we're talking 0 versus 1. In the big scheme, I still think even if it's 2 months delay, it's minimizing. So my theory is most people are going to pay it anyway. It's not big enough savings. And hopefully they save their stimulus check to pay it on May 15th.
I'm guessing it went for groceries.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of. My niece works for the postal service, and she said we've had so many parcels, just people buying because they got jobs and they got extra $1,200 to spend.
Right, exactly.
That would mean the 1% penalty would make more sense to you.
Okay, let's say that the property tax bill, and to make it easy to figure in our head, the annual bill on a particular parcel is $1,000. Okay? Now, they would have a first half of 500 and a second half 500. The 1% is on the 500 or the 1% is on the 1,000?
On the 500.
All right.
It'll be $5.
Okay. Okay. What do you want to do, folks?
Go ahead and take the vote. I'm going to be fine with it. I'm hoping that people are going to go ahead. We're not changing the due date. The due date remains May 15th. We're just removing the penalty. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the other part is school districts may find themselves with actually perhaps a little bit more money. Their utility bills are not there. Cost of fuel, they're not burning any fuel in those school buses, and there's some temporary employees that are not being paid. So I would think there is a bit of savings though with the school districts.
I'm guessing you're going to hear from Sartell.
Good eye, Joe. Anything else?
Yeah, I guess one more thing is I would like to look at this again when we come back to our next meeting for Randy to do an update. I will go ahead and vote with this because of the exemptions. But if we are seeing a not great amount in, I'd like to have some more information about that.
Okay. We're going to vote. The horse is starting to stink. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
District 1.
Aye.
All right. District 2.
Aye.
District 3.
Aye.
District 4. Aye. District 5.
Aye.
Okay. We won't take up the solar discussion this meeting. I ask that it be on a future agenda, and we'll wait for Dr. Willie to get back because I got a question on the email he sent us. I think Sunday morning about 7:43 in the morning. The bottom line is on that email.
Mr. Chair, I can hear and see you. So,
okay.
A question for me?
Yeah. What was that email that you sent on Sunday morning at 7:43? What was the bottom line on that? I thought I understood, and then I thought about it some more and confused myself. What's going on?
I'm trying to remember what it was myself.
The NACO.
Okay.
What's that?
Wasn't that NACO's request?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, we were getting bombarded with action alerts from AMC and MICA to contact our federal delegation in support of that the COVID package. And if you looked at the spreadsheet that was enclosed there, I think there was something like $14 million that would have could come to Stearns County. It was a significant amount of money on for many counties. So they were looking for elected officials to contact our federal delegation in support of that.
Okay, that's helpful.
I mean, certainly Stearns County has not incurred anywhere near those kinds of costs at this time. We are keeping track of all of our costs. And both AMC and Micah has asked us to document those right now so they can know what we're expending because of this COVID-19, and also if we have lost revenues, which is another thing that I think I would have brought up during issues by commissioners, is that we, your staff, we certainly understand that the economy is being damaged through all of this, and as we look to our 2021 budget and as we implement the 2020 budget, we are scrutinizing expenditures and hiring just because perhaps we're going to have to postpone some of those until a later time. But we're monitoring all of that, and we'll have discussions about that in the near future. The other thing that we're thinking about is how we open up county business after when we're able to, and we assume we're going to be doing that quite slowly to continue to have the social distance and those kinds of things. And actually, things we've been providing nearly all of our services to the public, even in this drastically changed manner. And so we will be able to slowly bring people back to buildings and open. But certainly, we're not just going to turn the lights on and open the doors and go back to business as usual in one day.
And going forward, let's not miss out on the opportunity to come up with ideas and ways to do different
Mr. Chair,
when they're needed.
I'll tell you that I am very much paying attention to that. In fact, I'm on behalf of MACA, I'm writing an article about
that's right.
just that we shouldn't let a good crisis not take advantage of some of the things that we've accomplished here. So you'll see that article in the next AMC newsletter coming up in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
There's many things that we have done that may not make total sense to completely continue, but they make sense to continue doing in some way, shape, or form.
All right. Anything else?
How's traffic at the West Service Center?
I don't know if Randy's still on or not, but if you're talking about the drive up, there's often 2-hour waits there. We've actually taken and had some porta potties installed there because people are waiting so long to use a restroom. That tells you what. We've also had inquiries from food vendors, truck type of vendors that want to put their business there because there's so many people congregated. So,
Mike, would it be any help?
I think those stories should tell you how it is.
Mike, would it be any help to extend those hours?
I think Randy and his crew are talking about that now. I think it might make sense. We did get the second drive up working well, and so they did some partitions in or are doing them, I think, or have already completed them, so the staff can work because they're pretty close proximity to one another. So there's a few things we had to do to continue both lanes, but and it's great for Stearns County because most other licensing agents couldn't be open, but with the drive up, we're able to do that.
Well, that's because people in Stearns County don't want to pay for a stamp.
Well, my neighboring business here is a DMV, and they actually do a walk up. They open the window, and then you have to walk up. I walked up there one day and said, "I'll have a M&M Blizzard." I thought it was Dairy Queen.
Yeah, those are the kinds of things we're doing all over, all different things. But kudos to all of our leadership and staff. They're making things work.
All righty. Any other items by commissioners? Well, I knew that the agenda would have less meaning than it typically does, simply because of the unique arrangement that we have to function under. But nevertheless, it went better than anticipated. So
I ended up in 2 rooms.
Yeah. So one crisis at a time. There's nothing else. I'd like to see us put a bow on it. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. Thanks for running a good meeting.
Thank you.